and welcome. I'm Jade of Jaded Reader, and it's actually kind of been a while. I've uploaded some videos, but they weren't really regular scheduled content, and that's because I just started a new job. I'm actually in the middle of a move. It all just kind of caught up with me. Today, as you can see by the title, I'm actually doing my May wrap-up, and it's July. I know that for a lot of people this doesn't matter, but as someone who's kept up fairly regularly on their wrap-ups, I'm a little annoyed with myself. I apologize that I haven't actually put out much substance lately. Getting back on track now, I finally have a handle on my work schedule and I know kind of what my game plan is. Without any more rambling, let's get into what I read a long time ago in a May far away. As I did just give this away in a giveaway, I'm going to quickly get past this one, and it is The Gilded Wolves by Rashomon. Most of these books are for the Asian Readathon that was hosted by Cindy at Read by Cindy, and I really did the best I could for this readathon considering I was in 2 Japanese classes and had a little less choices when it came to the variation of authors I could read. This, I think, out of all the books I read in May, was my least favorite. At first I thought it wasn't that bad, but as it slowly left my mind, I realized how much I disliked it. The beginning starts out really strong. I was pretty sure this is going to be a 5-star read for me. I'm not trying to dissuade you if you've started the book and you think you're liking it. I'm just saying that's kind of what happened to me. I started reading it, I was instantly enraptured by the characters, the premise, I loved the atmosphere, and then we just hit a really big character wall where I honestly stopped caring completely about the characters. Once I gotten to the point where your characters are established and you want to learn more about them, and I did want to learn more, I wasn't finding that I learned anything more. The plot became a little convoluted, and while I did enjoy the added math and coding aspect in this book, ultimately I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I almost might give it a 2.5 stars. I really haven't decided yet. There was one character in this book that was absolutely completely useless. What's his name? An added complaint. Tristan, who is one of the main character's younger brothers or foster brothers, had a lot of storyline in this plot, and honestly, he could have been taken out and I wouldn't have noticed. I found him completely useless, and I could not stand how many times one of the characters was described as having sugar in her hair. I get it, she bakes. We need other descriptive words. Anytime this character entered the room, it was there's sugar in her hair, she smells of sugar in her hair. I was done. This book was good for somebody and it wasn't for me. And I have my giveaway announcement linked above, so if you are waiting to find out if you've won this book, you've found out up there because I already announced it. The person hasn't gotten a hold of me yet. So again, if you have won this giveaway and you have not gotten back to me, congratulations again, and get back to me so I can send you this book. The next 3 or 3.5 star isn't necessarily its fault, it's just old. It's just these are ancient myths and fairy tales told in their original translated text. So, The Demon of Okuu Bridge and Other Japanese Tales by Harashirane, it just was bland. It was very old text, made a very long time ago, and it was translated quite simply. I have annotations, it was for class. Luckily, this was retold and translated by an author named Okutagawa, and I really enjoyed that book. I will be talking about that one later. Very old myths and legends. If you would like to become really familiar with Japanese myths and legends, then I would say that this is a very good start. The next book I have is an ebook. It's Happiness Volume 1 by Shuzo Oshimi. This was also for my class, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up only giving it 3.5 stars, but the potential I felt in this series was really overwhelming. I am excited to continue it, and I think it'll get better as it goes along. So this follows our main character who is changed into a vampire. He is struggling with his new vampire senses. This does have some gore involved, and honestly, I really appreciated the simple fact that it took care of the vampire problem that is in a lot of vampire books, if not all, and that is the fact that periods would affect vampires, and I'm not going to say much more, but that is definitely addressed in this book. As our main character is a high school student and is surrounded by people with periods, you find that he is in a lot of trouble as he tries to control his urges. It's a weird premise, but it was a fun book, and I really liked the art style that was in it. The panel transitions were really cool. You kind of felt like you were very immersed, and that's what I like in a manga, is that it's really immersive. The next book I read on audiobook, and that is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. So I have been told that I would really like Milk and Honey, and unfortunately it wasn't the book for me. If I was just rating it personally, for me it would be like a 3-star. The poems didn't hit for me. It wasn't that it wasn't an experience I'd had, it was just that, I don't know, the poems weren't hitting. I did end up giving this a 4-star on Goodreads because I feel that it was very personal and very raw, and I just haven't figured out how to rate poetry books. It does feel like a different medium entirely. So I had a personal score of a 3, but I did give it a 4. I think that the people out there that love this poetry collection need this poetry collection, and I don't think it was bad. It just wasn't for me. Then I also read for my Japanese manga class In Clothes Called Fat by Moyoko Ano. I found that this book probably has situations where it could be useful if someone is needing to empathetically learn more about eating disorders, if they have a lack of empathy for people with eating disorders. This might be a book to pick up so that you can realize that people with eating disorders are real and the pressures are incredible and that every journey is different. Definitely trigger warnings for eating disorders, for fatphobia. I think that all of the characters were somewhat dislikable, but it left a really bad feeling in my stomach. I can't think about this book positively. I found that the ending was also kind of unfulfilling. In a really deep way, I know that there's a place for this book, it's just not on my bookshelves, so I will be unhauling it. I'm pretty sure I didn't even rate this book. I guess I would give it a 3 because it's just not for me, but I don't know that it's bad. Just go into this book very cautiously, and definitely I would say if you have eating disorders, maybe don't go into it at all. Then I have Okuu by Fumiyu Shinaga. This is the Inner Chambers Volume 9. I've explained this a couple times on my channel, but I did not get to choose a lot of the books I read in May, and this is one of them. There's nothing wrong with this series. I found the plot really compelling. I just was starting on Volume 9, so it was a little confusing for me, so I didn't end up rating this book. You have an alternate universe of feudal Japan where a red-faced pox has taken over and eliminated a large amount of the male population. This had a lot of political intrigue. I thought it had a lot of interesting conversations. In class, it was told to me that there was transgender representation. Unfortunately, I didn't find any transgender representation, though if you find transgender representation, please correct me and I will leave a pinned comment amending that below. I wouldn't say there's any real triggers in this book that I came across, except for the fact that there's a disease, so if you have a disease phobia and you're afraid of 3/4 of the male population being destroyed, then this isn't the book for you. Next up, the physical copy has moved to my new location, but I also read Tokyo Tairaba Girls. I actually go into Tokyo Tairaba Girls pretty descriptively on my manga video that I will have linked above. Really enjoyed Tokyo Tairaba Girls. It does deal with ageism and sexism. You have a 30-year-old main character who has just found out that the 2020 Olympics is going to be hosted in Tokyo, and she, being alive for the first Tokyo Olympics, starts to feel a lot of pressure at living through 2 Olympics in her city. So she decides to make the goal of finding a husband by 2020. So as the Olympics slowly approaches, things are just not going as planned. Although her career has taken off, her romantic life is pretty stagnant. I found that there were really in-depth moments in this manga, though initially I didn't see them. It did help that I was discussing them in class, and I really disliked the potential love interest. So by the end of the manga, I'm a little unsure. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I really didn't like where it was going, but I enjoyed the ride. I also was subjected to EGF by Kazuto Tatsuda. This is a memoir. It is very dry. If you are interested in the Fukushima power plant, this is a good book for you. It has a lot of facts, a lot of information. It's very day in the life. I would label it as a gekiga. It is an older gentleman depicting how the nuclear power plant is actually run, how their cleanup is going, their safety hazards, pretty much his day-to-day life. There is an outcry for more funding for the Fukushima power plant, as well as the quality of life for its workers. It's very controversial having nuclear energy. You do get a bit of Tatsuda's perspective on that, which I think is valuable. 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like we probably could have made it a little bit more interesting, but I also feel it's probably a really accurate accurate textbook representation of what his day in the life is. I also read the picture book all about Japan and more. This is a very cute, very short picture book. I've read it before, I've read it again. It has fun, quick facts that get you a little bit more familiar with Japan. I recommend this for kids if you're trying to get them interested in Japanese culture. It's really fun and really short. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it that I can tell. It was all accurate based off of what I have seen of Japan, and although it is older, I feel that it's aged fairly well given the technology that's mentioned. So I gave All About Japan 5 out of 5 stars. It's a little harmless, fun book that I enjoyed. Another book I read by Moyoko Anno and liked quite a bit more than In Clothes Called Fat was Saccharine by Moyoko Anno. This is a standalone manga that has a lot of action-packed moments and then a lot of disturbing, crude details. This manga is a very fictitious version of a life in a Yoshiwara, or a pleasure district, a red light district. These women are forced into prostitution, so I would label that as a trigger warning, and it is very sexual. So if you don't like sexual depictions in books, these ones are pretty crude. So the main character is at first a child, and you learn a little bit about her background as she grows up in the Yoshiwara. She becomes a famous oiran, or the highest level in the pleasure district. And the mystery here is, although you know she becomes one of the most successful oirans in the district, she's also constantly throughout this manga trying to escape. So you wonder what could have happened, what could have gone wrong. It was a really interesting, deep read. I don't know why I'm not giving it a 5-star, except for I guess I just wanted a little bit more in the middle. There was like a slow lag that I feel like could have been a translation problem that just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Also, it was hard to tell who was speaking. The word bubbles didn't really have directions in them, and so I understand a lot of the time that means that it doesn't matter who's speaking the dialogue, but some of the time in this manga it did. I would not say that this is a beginner manga, and definitely not a young adult manga. This is an adult advanced manga to read. It is also out of print, so this is one you would possibly have to read as an ebook. Just a heads up. Another one that's at my new location is Eternal Zero by Naoki Hokuda. This book I really didn't want to read. I'm not really interested in war stories. There's your first bit of context. Second, it was like modern for half a second, and then the main character goes and visits these different war veterans and get their story, and they start talking about this plane, which is the Zero plane, and it's a famous Japanese plane, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the second human that is continually talked about this plane in like the first 30 pages. I'm going to die. And then I kept reading because it was required for me to read, and I slowly became more and more invested in what was going on, and then I really became invested in what was going on, and I started looking up like Zero plane like videos, and I looked up that there's a convention going on in Seattle later that has an actual Zero plane, and they have old testimonies from people who flew them. I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. I became incredibly emotionally invested in the characters. I was crying by the end of it. I was not ready for the ending. It was heart-wrenching. There is a film about this movie that was very accurate, I felt, to the book, so if I'm ever asked that question again for a tag, I will be saying this one because it was a really great depiction of the story. I was really, really into this book by the end of it, and I didn't want to read it almost the entire time through. I don't know when the switch happened, but if you are interested in war stories, this is a good one. This is it. If you're not interested, but someone is really pushing you to be interested, this is it. You have a modern early generation in the 2010s, and he is finding out about his biological grandfather. He has a grandfather he's known his entire life, but he finds out that it is not his biological one, and so he goes to go find information with his sister. Upon the first interview, you find out his biological grandfather is known as a coward in the military and that he was a kamikaze. So the trigger warnings I do have for this book is, I would almost say, an extreme nationalism, if that's something that terrifies you. I would say that that would be one. You have kamikazes who are known as like nationalists who are dying for their country, and there's also a suicide element involved. So if suicide is a trigger for you, keep in mind these are pilots and these are real people who crashed their airplanes into ships and other planes during World War II in Japan. So that is an element that's in it, and then you find out more and more about this character and why he was depicted as a coward. You start to get an idea of what's going on, and you become invested in his cause and what he was standing for, and that his story is finally told, and it was really good. Did I say I gave it 5 out of 5 stars? And yeah, I was still reading. This is all May. This was my May. I read a short story by Miyazawa Kenji. It was The Restaurant of Many Orders. It was short, it was funny, it was cute. If you like short stories, I highly recommend you pick up this one. It was cute and clever. I really like Miyazawa Kenji. He's one of my favorite Japanese authors. He writes really good short stories. He has Night on the Galactic Railroad, and it's just really whimsical. It has a magical realism vibe that I really enjoy. So if you are looking to kind of get into Japanese literature and you want a very nice starting point, I highly recommend Miyazawa Kenji's work, and The Restaurant of Many Orders was no exception. Yeah, I read more short stories. This is Ryunosuke Akutagawa's version of the short stories I had mentioned previously from Demon at Augie Bridge, that really dry, boring stuff I was talking about like 10 minutes ago. Well, he rewrote them and they're amazing. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. I think that Akutagawa is really clever and cunning with his work. While Rashomon is the name of the movie that is very famously known, it is the retelling of the Bamboo Grove, which is my favorite short story in this book. If you have read Rashomon, then I highly recommend you reading its original work in a Bamboo Grove, and Rashomon kind of ties into it in a really unique, interesting way. These were really cool retellings, especially after reading all of the dry original folklore. This felt like fresh water, and I really, really enjoyed it. Lone Wolf and Cub by Kazuo Koike was amazing. This is one of my new favorite series. I read the first and second volume. These are the omnibus versions, so they're very large. You can't tell because they're just 2D models on the screen, but they're very thick. They're thick boys, and I loved them. They are fun, they are cool, they remind me of like manga Tarantino films, so there's some gore in it. It's very Gekiga, like cinematic. I just was over the moon for this, and it follows a father who is a ronin, so he's a samurai without like a government. He roams and kind of does like assassin jobs, and while he always goes with the highest bidder, he also has like his own moral code that I just found really interesting, and the humor in it, it's very subtle and clever, and the entire time while doing these like hit jobs, he's towing around his like 2-year-old in a stroller, and you have to read it to understand. Please go read this manga. It is so much fun. I'm gonna leave it there at that. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was a blast. I read Beast Player by Nohoko Uehashi. This follows a girl named Erin, and she loses her mother to a creature called Toda. Now, her mother was taking care of Toda, a Japanese water serpent type creature, and I do label them as a type of dragon in my dragon video, so if you would like more information on why I think that's a dragon, click that video. Otherwise, they're dragons. They're dragon serpent water creatures. After her mother is killed, she goes on the run. She ends up living with a beekeeper. Things happen. More creatures are involved. There's a beast which is on the front cover that I would say is the main beast of this story, and it's called the Royal Beast, and Erin finds out that she is able to somewhat control these beasts more than others due to her lineage. So you find out more about her backstory, about how these animals connect with Erin, and I really, really, really loved this book. It is a standalone. I felt like it should have maybe been a series. I don't know. I feel like I needed more time. It is a slow read, but it's really, really good. I had my dear friend Rachel at Rachel Marie Book Junkie dislike it, and I can kind of see where she's coming from. Like, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I'd say if you're unfamiliar with Japanese language, this does follow a very traditional way of speaking. The dialogue does seem very short and simplistic. I found that I liked how this was translated, but I understand how someone might not care for the translation. She's running out of battery life, folks. Alright, I then read The Golden Kamui. This was another 5-star read for me. I go into it in quite a bit of detail in my manga video, but essentially it has 2 main characters who are on the hunt for a treasure, and it shows really deep investments in Ainu culture, which is the natives of Hokkaido, show in Japan. Really cool, very interesting. I had a lot of fun reading this manga, and I really enjoyed the survival skills, as well as the two main characters' dynamic. It's not a romantic connection. Instead, it was just like companionship, and I just really enjoyed their dynamic. And I felt that while the main character is male, that the female character also had a lot to contribute to the story. She was not just a stand-in female character meant as any sort of love interest or anything like that, which often does happen in this type of manga, but instead it was just a really cool story, and I want more, so much more. I also read physically and on audiobook. This didn't take me very long. It was a reread for me, and I did read it on like 1.5 speed. Illuminate by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I actually don't remember why I did this. Not even gonna lie. Was it for Witchathon? It was really good. I love Illuminate. This is actually, I think, my favorite out of the series. It might be a toss-up between this and Gemina. It's done in mixed media format, and if you are new to my channel, I super support the idea of reading this book physically while also listening to it audibly, because it's an amazing combination that you really just don't ever get. Do it. It's good. It's fun. It's shiny. I also read The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. I was highly recommended this book by Rhiannon at Crescent Moon Reads. They love this book. They love the author. I really could not stop thinking about this book because Rhiannon was so invested in it, and then Madison read it, and Madison became also very invested with it. And then, of course, as Madison does, she got me the book. And so then, of course, I had to get invested in it, and I really did enjoy The Devouring Grey. This is dark and atmospheric. I really enjoyed the character development, and some of the scenes were truly eerie. I really liked it. It does take place in our world outside of New York City. You have the main character, Violet, who ends up in her mother's childhood town, and you find out that her mother is a founder along with several others in the town, and so this kind of gave me like Vampire Diaries vibes with like the founders in the small town and that whole thing. This felt like I was reading a CW show. It was a really good CW show, but it definitely had that vibe to it. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I couldn't quite pinpoint why it wasn't a 5 for me. I found that a lot of everyone's favorite character wasn't mine. I really liked Harper. Harper was awesome. She's a badass. She's missing a hand, and she likes fencing. So Harper was my favorite character in this book, and I just wasn't as interested in some of the other characters. Like, I really liked Harper a lot. I thought Violet was cool, and then the two boys just didn't click for me, and I'm really sorry because I know some of you like one of the characters a lot. I didn't dislike him. He just didn't give me any emotions at all. I'm sorry. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Am I done yet? No? Okay, then there was the Asian Readathon group book. I did not finish it by the end of May. I kept reading it through June. I was listening to it as I fell asleep because honestly, as you can see, because I had so many books, I didn't have any more hours in the day, so I just listened to it as I fell asleep. It was enjoyable. It was good. I'm giving 1000 Beginnings and Endings, which was edited by Ellen O, a 4 out of 5 stars. I liked a lot of the stories, but after that many short stories in 1 month, I gotta tell you guys, it was starting to blur. Starting to blur together, and I was tired. I'm tired of even talking about this wrap-up. It was a tiring month, okay? And it's done. May's done. It's gonna not be May anymore. It's over. So I hope this was a substantial wrap-up. I don't know what's gonna look like at the end. I hope you are enjoying the sun or more stars wherever you are, and until next time, bye! Self-confidence, check. I'm trying to think of proper words. She becomes a famous. It's just somewhere else. I wonder how many times I'll have to outtake it's at the new location. I'm trying not to cry right now. Erin, I do not understand. Wakati. And a lot of, it's dead battery, hold on. I'm so tired, guys. I'm so tired of talking about things I read about 2 months ago. Where's The Devouring Grey? Whew, it's hot. I've been doing this for a while. I reread Illuminate by Jay Kaufman and Amy Kristoff. I'm not shipping that. I'm sorry. I'm almost done.